Hello, I'm Esther Gitu. Welcome to Africa 54. Here's what's coming up. Kenya is ready to send a 1,000-member force to Haiti to help curb gang violence, but some Kenyans have reservations about the move. Former U.S. President Donald Trump appears in a New York State court where a judge is considering a case that could result in the dissolution of his business interests in the state. And a top U.S. legislator asks the South African government to demonstrate its value for Washington as it courts other foreign powers. All this and much more coming up on today's Africa 54. It appears that Kenyan troops will be leading a multinational force to Haiti to help combat violent gangs that have grown incredibly powerful while overwhelming the police force in that nation. The United Nations Security Council approved the resolution to authorize the force on Monday. The United States initially forwarded the resolution to the UN Security Council to authorize the force, and Monday the Council approved the resolution with 13 votes and 2 abstentions from China and Russia Federation. Critics of the plan note that Kenyan police have been accused of killings and torture, and some wonder how an English-speaking force would interact with a population that speaks mostly Haitian Creole.
The MSS mission must take necessary action to ensure appropriate conduct and discipline and to prevent sexual exploitation and abuse.
The White House is promising to provide logistics and $100 million to support the Kenyan-led force. Speaking from State House in Nairobi on Tuesday, Kenyan President William Ruto said his country's participation in peacekeeping missions around the world had prepared it to lead the force in Haiti.
I welcome the resolution as an overdue and critical instrument to define the multinational mission. This mission is a fundamental intervention to provide the necessary conditions for Haiti to consolidate its development and governance. It is therefore absolutely essential that resources as well as operational scope available to the UN team, as well as other humanitarian and development actors on the ground in Haiti, be appropriately reinforced.
Kenyan President William Ruto speaking in Nairobi after the United Nations Security Council authorized a foreign security mission to Haiti. The Kenyan government says it is ready to send 1,000 members of its police force into Haiti to help curb gang violence. Some Kenyans say it's a good idea, while others are expressing concerns about the proposal. VOA's Nairobi Bureau Chief Maria Madiallo has more.
Kenyans are divided on the issue of sending 1,000 members of its police force to help quell gang violence in Haiti.
There are countries much stronger than us who could have intervened who could have intervened first. Those criminal elements in Haiti, first of all, I think they don't need police. They need soldiers.
I think that the Kenyan police force is a force that we have. We have faith in it, and there's no reason why we should doubt their capacity.
The Kenyan government says Haiti's far-off location in the Caribbean isn't a deterrent.
We decided we are going to go and help Haiti.
Cabinet Secretary for Foreign and Diaspora Affairs Alfred Mutua recently announced Kenya is ready to lead the multinational police force.
We've got other African nations that are coming on board. We've got other nations from all the world. They're saying if Kenya is leading it, we think there's going to be success. So they're coming on board.
On a recent visit to Kenya, U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin lauded the plan.
And we intend to work with the United States Congress to provide up to $100 million in support. And we urge others in the international community to follow Kenya's great example.
Austin was in Nairobi with his Kenyan counterpart, Aden Duale.
Kenya has a very long history of global peacekeeping. We were in Kosovo, we were in Namibia, We were everywhere. We are now in Somalia, we're in DRC. We have our officers in the Tigray monitoring and evaluation mechanism.
But others, like former Kenyan Defense Secretary Eugene Wamalwa, disagree.
First of all, I mean, what interest would we have to be in Haiti as a third world country that is over 12,000 kilometers away, that many of our officers don't even understand, don't even know French or Creole in terms of even communicating with the Haitians? It would be a problem. And even in terms of training and preparation to engage in such a complex security situation, where there's urban warfare with guns.
Vincent Kimosop is a Kenyan economist and policy analyst.
It's unprecedented. We only get to hear about Haiti if it is not natural disasters, the issues of insecurity, political instability. But you know, the people who are in Haiti have an African descent. And we have an Ubuntu philosophy in Africa. I am because you are, and because you are, I am. So when you remove the political, eventually a decision to go help a neighbor who is struggling will be loaded within a broader conversation in the African context.
Kimosop says he supports the administration's decision, but also believes the government should be more transparent and communicate more with the Kenyan public. Mariama Diallo, VOA News, Nairobi.
For more on what Haitians think of a foreign force and what the Kenyan police contingent should expect on arrival, we spoke to Sandra Lemaye of VOA's Creole Service.
People realize that they need a multinational force to come in and help them deal with the gangs because the government has been unable to, the National Police Force has been unable to. But, you know, they're very skeptical because of the UN force that was in Haiti, which left in 2017, which, you know, left them with cholera and child rape and, you know, fatherless children. And, you know, they were accused of some abuses. Haiti is a very complicated place, and the gang situation is a very complicated one. I've never been to Kenya, so it's hard for me to give you an equivalent of, you know, what it's like where the gangs, like, have their stronghold. But I can compare it to a catacomb where it's like a web of different places. There are a lot of places to hide. These people have huge weapons that, you know, are brand new, and they're comparable to some of the things that law enforcement in the United States has. So there are a lot of opportunities for ambushes and things like that. Obviously, I'm sure that the Kenyan police force is very adept and very skilled. But I don't think that it's going to be a very simple operation because the gangs have really taken over 80% of the capital.
That was Sandra Lemaye of VOA's Creole Service. A top U.S. legislator asks the South African government to demonstrate its value for Washington as it quotes other foreign powers like Russia and China. VOA's Ignatius Anor has this report.
South Africa's growing partnership with Russia and China, U.S. officials say, has its long-standing partner, the United States, unnerved about its future bilateral relationship. That prompted a congressional hearing at the U.S. Capitol where witnesses gave accounts of how South Africa's foreign policy and that of the ruling party, the African National Congress, or the ANC, does not reflect the position of the South African people. John James is chair of the U.S. Foreign Affairs Subcommittee on Africa.
South Africa has a choice in what partners to prioritize, but so too does the United States. I believe it entirely appropriate to scrutinize the conduct of our important partner when the risks compromising our strong, dynamic, bilateral relationship are at hand. It's my belief that South Africa is currently at an inflection point, and I view the next several months as critical in demonstrating whether it will put our important partnership back on track.
Certainly stepping forward and
Anthony Carroll is an adjunct professor at the Johns Hopkins University School of Advanced International Studies in Washington. He said, despite the Southern African nation boasting of a very vibrant multi-party democracy with a robust civil society, it is becoming, quote, a failing state, end of quote. He cited its failure to deliver critical public services like electricity and deadly xenophobia as examples. But Carroll said the African Growth and Opportunity Act, known commonly as AGOA, should not be impacted.
while I share the concerns of many about the direction of our relations with South Africa, I would oppose making it ineligible for AGOA. First, I do not believe that its embrace of Russia constitutes a direct threat to U.S. security. Second, goods exported to the United States provide critical jobs to South Africa and provide lower-priced goods for the U.S. consumers. Third, South Africa's removal from AGOA would only play into the hands of anti-U.S. elements within the ANC and the radical EFF party.
Reddy Klabi, a South African journalist, cited a recent survey that shows an increasing dissatisfaction of South Africans with democracy. She said South Africa's democracy must not be left to collapse because, according to her, Russia has been successful in countries where democracy is, quote, flimsy, end of quote. She mentioned Madagascar, Sudan, and the Central African Republic.
A strong economy keeps rogue nations out. We have seen Russia's aggressive return and re-engagement with the continent, and we must use the word return and re-engagement because it suggests that there was a time when Russia left Africa, which is not a message that it preaches.
Chris Maroulen is International Chief Executive Officer at Good Governance Africa, a Johannesburg-based non-profit organization focused on promoting good governance in Africa. He told the committee that South Africa's neutral position in the Russia-Ukraine conflict is in sharp contrast to the country's constitutional aspirations.
Many see strategic non-alignment as incongruent with our constitutional aspirations of human dignity, the achievements of equality, and the advancement of human rights and freedom.
The expert said the U.S. and South Africa have far more in common than with Russia, such as a free press and an independent judiciary. That, they argue, could offer a roadmap to improve relations between the two countries. Ignatius Ano, VOA News, Washington.
For more perspective on the U.S. South Africa relations, I'm joined live via Skype from Johannesburg by Marisa Lorenzo, a South African political analyst. Marisa, welcome to Africa 54.
Right. Hi. Thanks so much for being here.
Marisa, is there any official reaction from South Africa regarding the question raised by U.S. legislator John James?
So not so much from John James, but what we did see is the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Naledi Pandor. She actually made a statement a few days ago towards the comments made by Reddy Klabi and Chris Maroulen, and she said that actually it is only official government delegates that should be commenting on South African affairs and not anyone outside of that circle. And of course, you know, democracy doesn't work that way. These people are part of civil society. They are well within their rights to comment on South Africa and the direction in which it is going. So I don't think that Minister Pandor's comments have been well received. But nonetheless, this is what they have stated so far. And I think that the government would be unhappy with this because the ANC is the main political party, but it's very easy to conflate the ANC with the government and then also with the state. So it won't be very happy that there's not a unified message going out.
You know, a number of South Africans, as you heard, spoke at the congressional hearing saying the position of the South African government doesn't necessarily reflect that of the South African people, but is there consensus on that?
I wouldn't say that there's consensus because, you know, South Africa is a society that's made up of many different groups. But again, going back to what I just said, that it's very...
Marisa?
So I wouldn't say that it's easy to reach consensus, but I think that there is growing frustration among South Africans who don't feel represented by the ANC and are worried by the ANC's foreign relations stance and what this means for the country, especially for things like currency risk and investment risk.
Marisa, quickly, what's at stake here if the relationship between the United States and South Africa continue to deteriorate?
Well, the U.S. is one of South Africa's largest trade partners next to China. So it's really one of the partners that South Africa does have to tread carefully. But I think equally the U.S. also has to tread carefully because South Africa is really its gateway into the rest of Africa. I think that we have seen the U.S. soften towards South Africa and to other African states. I think that they have realized that those African governments that are abstaining in the UN General Assembly regarding the Russia-Ukraine conflict, this is not a vote of support for Russia. It's just choosing to abstain. It is choosing to remain neutral. So I think that relations are heading towards a better point than they were at the beginning of this year. But I do think that both sides do need to be very, very careful in how they communicate with each other, because South Africa needs the U.S. as a trade partner. But the U.S. would also be very careful not to upset South Africa as the most advanced economy in Africa.
Marisa, many thanks. Marisa Lorenzo is a South African political analyst. Still to come in our health report, Lino Mudu has the latest on Pepfar's impact and funding. We'll be right back.
On the next Straight Talk Africa, we'll examine U.S. foreign policy towards Africa. Almost a year ago, the second U.S.-Africa summit took place in Washington, aimed at strengthening ties between the U.S. and the continent. Join me, Haiti Adams, and my guests as we explore what has been accomplished and how U.S. foreign policy should adjust to the changes on the continent. Join me, Haiti Adams, on the next Straight Talk Africa.
In other news, Niger has started 3 days of national mourning on Tuesday after 29 soldiers were killed Monday in a suspected jihadist attack northwest of Tabatol near the border with Mali, an area plagued by fighting with militants affiliated with the Islamic State group and Al-Qaeda. Nigerian residents say an explosion and fire at an illegal oil refinery site in the Niger Delta region has killed at least 15 people. The blast happened Monday in the southern River State's Emohua district, where illegal refineries are common. Residents say the death toll is likely to grow because many of the bodies were completely burned and dozens of people were injured. And Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has confirmed that he will stand for a third term in office in December's election. Opposition parties are complaining that people trying to register support for other candidates are facing obstacles. Al-Sisi had been widely expected to run again and secure a third term after constitutional amendments 4 years ago that would allow him to stay in office until 2030. Former U.S. President Donald Trump appeared in a New York State court Monday, where a judge is considering a case that could result in the dissolution of his considerable business interests in the state and a ban against Trump and his 2 adult sons ever doing business there again. New York State Attorney General Letitia James charged Trump, his sons Donald Jr. and Eric, the Trump Organization, and several other defendants with offering misleading financial disclosures to their financial counterparties. The trial judge has ruled that prosecutors had so clearly demonstrated that Trump and his co-defendants had committed repeated and persistent fraud in their financial disclosures that it would not be required to argue that element of its case during trial. Trump has declared his innocence on all charges. The African island nation Sao Tome and Principe has only one cardiologist for its approximately 200,000 inhabitants. Her name is Maureen Cassandra, and VOA's Oscar Medeiros spoke to her in this report Narrated by Barbara Santos.
Jersey Borges says she traveled more than 150 kilometers, 93 miles by boat, from Príncipe Island to Sao Tome Island, seeking help from the only cardiologist on the archipelago, Dr. Miriam Cassandra.
I live in Príncipe and we don't have a cardiologist there. I've been through so many medical appointments, exams, but they couldn't find out what I have. So the doctor there transferred me so I could be seen by Dr. Miriam.
Dr. Cassandra is the only cardiologist for Sao Tome and Príncipe's more than 200,000 inhabitants. She sees 20 to 25 patients a day.
It turns out to be a big overload in the sense of having to be always available to solve problems, and it is a heavy burden to know that all people who develop heart conditions may need me.
Cardiovascular diseases are the #1 pathology in the only hospital in the country, says the Ministry of Health of Sao Tome and Príncipe. Gerisandra Souza is one of the 2 technicians working in the cardiology service at Hospital Aires de Menezes.
At the moment, my colleague has been out of the country for a specialization of 2 years, and I am alone and responding to the entire technical part of the department. It's very sad.
Health Minister Celso Junqueira says more needs to be done to train personnel and also reach out to other foreign partners for assistance.
We have already expressed interest with our partners like Portugal, the World Health Organization, and even Cuba, so that we can invest more in training in this area, taking into account that the demand is increasing.
The lifestyle of the population mirrors that of the world. A lack of physical activity and the exaggerated consumption of alcohol and salt are contributing to the high prevalence of cardiovascular diseases in Sao Tome and Príncipe. However, around 60% of patients with cardiovascular diseases do not follow up with medical treatment due to lack of financial resources, says Dr. Cassandra.
We make appointments, but many don't show up on the appointment day for financial reasons to travel between islands. Another concern is that cardiovascular diseases are chronic diseases and need continued medication. The increase in the cost of living has worsened this scenario. It is very worrying.
In most cases that require evacuation to Portugal, patients end up dying, says Dr. Cassandra.
We have patients waiting for almost a year and their condition is deteriorating. We have many cases like that and it's getting worse. It's very alarming. For some of those transfers, we could have solutions right here in the country, but for that, we would need local investment.
After about 2 years of operating in makeshift facilities, the cardiology service at Hospital Aires de Menezes has recently been rehabilitated, but Dr. Cassandra says more needs to be done to modernize the hospital. For Oscar Menezes in Sao Tome and Príncipe, Barbara Santos, VOA News.
It's time for Health Report, and joining us now is Africa 54 health correspondent Lino Mudu with news on malaria vaccine. Hello, Lino.
Hello, Esther. Hello, everyone. Well, we're talking about HIV/AIDS today. In 2003, U.S. President George W. Bush launched the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, or Pepfar. The program has provided funding for HIV/AIDS prevention, treatment, care, and support services, particularly in countries with high prevalence rates. Data from the U.S. State Department reveals that through Pepfar, over 20 million people accessed antiretroviral treatment and more than 5 million babies have been born HIV-free to mothers living with HIV. However, Pepfar has also been subject to debates and controversies, which has impacted funding renewal. Its restrictions on funding for organizations that provide or promote abortion services. For more insight and perspective on Pepfar, joining me now is Chip Lyons, President and CEO of the Elizabeth Glaser Pediatric AIDS Foundation, EGPAF. Hello, Chip. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me.
First off, talk to us about the impact of Pepfar, especially with regards to the work of EGPAF, addressing children with HIV/AIDS or preventing mother-to-child transmission.
Well, you made very important comments in your opening there in terms of the overall impact of PEPFAR over 20 years. I mean, it's been transformational. PEPFAR turned to the Elizabeth Glaser Pediatric AIDS Foundation at the start of PEPFAR, really to focus in on stopping mother-to-child transmission. Fast forward to today, it's just remarkable the treatment that we have, the low cost fraction of what it used to be, reduced new pediatric infections, more kids on treatment. The pediatric age group is still lagging behind adults in terms of those living with the virus and not being on treatment and so on. But PEPFAR has just been phenomenal, as have the partnerships with ministries of health and community groups and so on. We still have a big job to do, though, and that's what is in front of us.
And the job requires money. One of the issues is funding renewal for PEPFAR. So PEPFAR remains funded for now, but Congress has not passed a longer-term extension of the program. What are your thoughts?
Let's be clear about the difference between reauthorizing PEPFAR, and that's the challenge at present, versus funding for PEPFAR. What we strongly urge in really daily discussions here in Washington, D.C., is that PEPFAR be reauthorized for 5 years, as is. This would be the fourth reauthorization of PEPFAR. That should have technically happened by September 30th, i.e. Friday last week, which is the end of the U.S. government fiscal year. It has not been reauthorized, and there's an argument, a battle over whether it should be reauthorized. What's important to note, though, is the funding from PEPFAR for services and programs in the field. That funding can and does and is continuing. PEPFAR is still working. Our colleagues are working today and this week and next month and so on. The distinction is it's politically disappointing that PEPFAR has not been reauthorized, but the work will continue. And what's really very important about that reauthorization is it really does express what exists still today, which is strong bipartisan, Republican, Democratic support for PEPFAR. Okay. That's still in place.
Okay, Chip, we have to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us today. Chip Lyons is President and CEO of the Elizabeth Glaser Pediatric AIDS Foundation. And that's our health report for today. To stay in touch, find me on Twitter at Linor Moudou. Back to you, Esther.
Thank you, Lino. Be sure to watch Lino Moudou's health reports every Tuesday right here on Africa 54. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thanks for watching.